Deputy Speaker, and it was very interesting to follow the last speaker, because obviously I did an intervention earlier related to him. He knows I fundamentally disagree with him. This is a tax cut for everybody, irrespective of the value of their house. And fundamentally, what we know is that the housing market is gummed up. I have serious questions about whether the Labour government will be able to meet its housing targets. I'm not sure what those housing numbers are currently. Maybe he'll be able to enlighten me. But fundamentally, this is a tax cut that will apply to everybody. But my reflections, my honourable friend earlier said about the speeches coming from opposite, they've been very interesting, but they are slightly siloed. They slightly miss out the context of what we're talking about currently in an economy that is stalling. With the jobs tax, which has meant that there's unemployment has gone up. That means hard-working families, more of them are now unemployed. More young people are now out of work as a result of this Labour government, and they can absolutely talk down this motion, as I'm sure they will, because the whips have told them to do so, and all the other things. But the reality is, we are putting something on the table that is credible, that is funded, and that will ungum the housing market, but it will also contribute £1.2 billion worth of economic growth. And at a time when the Chancellor is scrambling to fill her own black hole, we put credible ideas on the table, and they should take it more seriously. I will take the intervention.
He said that this tax cut will benefit everybody. I wonder if you could tell me, how will it benefit the people who don't currently pay it because their property isn't worth enough?
Two ways. First of all, increase mobility in the housing market, and also, as my right honourable friend for North West Hampshire stated in an incredibly eloquent speech, it will also mean that the construction industry and all the peripheral jobs will start to mobilise. It will create economic growth, and I suspect actually the 1.2 billion is probably a bit understated actually, and it will probably create more. We're talking about creating jobs and making people wealthier. Being aspirational for the aspirational, and instead of what they're talking about, which is talking down a credible policy that will put money on the table for some of our poorest people. Ultimately, it means that more and more people will be able to get onto the housing ladder, because let's face it, I posed the question earlier, the government is not going to meet its housing targets. It's quite obvious already. They're massively way behind. It's not possible to do so. They're killing off aspiration and confidence in the economy, and housing builders are not going to want to meet those unless, of course, they're met with huge subsidies. And so the question really I have for the government benches is, how much representation have they made on the back of the current economic situation to their Chancellor about putting growth principles on there and cutting taxes so people have more money in their pockets? And the answer will be no, none, because that's not happening. The member for Loughborough talked about, he said he wasn't making an argument for not cutting welfare. He didn't put a figure on the table. How much welfare we know the welfare bill is ballooning. It started ballooning post-COVID. It was happening, right? We did interventions during the pandemic. It had to happen. We saved the £2 trillion economy. We saved businesses. We saved jobs. We did all of those things, sometimes with the support of the opposition benches and sometimes not, sad to say. But we did all that to save the economy. But of course, all of that comes with a cost. It is now right that we look forward and look forward to make sure that we are putting proposals on the table that help grow the economy. And by the way, help the Chancellor get out of this mess, because actually I want her to do better, because right now I've got constituents who are struggling, who are anxious, who are worried. Her policies, backed by the benches opposite, have contributed, bless you, Madam Deputy Speaker, have contributed to higher inflation and higher cost of living. These are all consequences that they've backed and they've walked through the voting lobbies. There is a budget coming, and while they may be talking in silo, the government is already briefing out to papers about all the taxes they're going to rise, and they're not talking seriously about, they talk about serious government, they're not talking about seriously about the cuts that they're going to have to put on the table, because the Chancellor knows the moment she does that, it's going to be her backbenchers that stab her in the back. And that's the fundamental conundrum she's got, because she's also now going to placate the bond market, where we've got the highest bond yield. I see shaking heads, that's the reality of what the backbenchers are dealing with. We are putting proposals on the table where people can, and by the way, good proposals, which mean that young families who want to get on the housing ladder. I'm happy for the PPS to take it. I'll take an intervention from PPS if he wants to. It's okay. Well, I was offering an opportunity, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was getting distracted by chuntering. But the reality is, most serious economists Dan Needle, the IFS, have said that this is a bad tax. In fact, the Member of Parliament for Swansea West, who I hear is very instrumental in this budget, has talked about stamp duty being a bad tax. We all agree on that. So we put a policy on the table with cuts, with funding, which the Chancellor is going to need. Surely this is something we should all be taking seriously, because the government is going to need those answers, and I suspect we will come back to that. We've also, I know lots has been made about the fiscal rules of the Chancellor. I think they were named, I think the Chief Secretary of Treasury said they were ironclad. I suspect they are until the next ones. We've got a golden rule. We in the spirit of rules, we put a golden rule. The Leader of the Opposition put a golden rule, and that said for every pound saved, half will go in cutting our national debt. Surely that is something we can all get behind. That when the interest on our debt is something like £100 billion a year, surely that is something we can get behind. When the Chancellor, month after month, is borrowing more to meet everyday spending, that is obviously happening, and that is there. The other point I just wanted to make was there was an argument about the cliff edge, and we had the window. I think my right honourable friend spoke about this, the window through COVID, and I was one of those who was on the receiving end of not being able to buy a house at that time. I was looking at the time for my new family, and houses were going quickly because people were trying to beat the cliff edge at the end of the stamp duty. This is not the same thing, right? This gets rid of that window, and it means that more and more people will be able to do so. So I do question that. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm grateful to him. I'm perplexed by the argument that the Liberal Democrats advanced earlier that that abolishing stamp duty will raise taxes. Presumably, the quid pro quo is if you raised it, that would lower taxes, that would lower prices. So why aren't they proposing that policy?
Well, I'm sure the Liberal Democrat spokesman, it's a good point he's making, and the Lib Dem spokesman will address that in there, but it speaks to their economic incoherence in what they've presented already. But fundamentally, we believe in property rights. We believe in the ownership of property and the rights that derive from there, the freedom, the fundamental freedoms in this country. And it is a moment of great pride when you take the first keys for your first house, and I'm sure there are for others. Cutting stamp duty is the right thing to do, and if we win the next election, that's exactly what we will be doing.